I knew silence. This is important to document. Before the nails, before the Legion, before 2.5 centuries of screaming, I knew what silence felt like, not the absence of sound. The absence of the machine's voice in my skull, demanding blood. I was 23 Terran Standard when they installed the Butcher's nails. My name was Karthak. I served in the Warhounds Legion, 12th Legion Astartes, before we became the World Eaters, before Angron, before everything changed. I remember the last morning without them. We stood in formation on the embarkation deck of the Conqueror, waiting for our Primarch's address. The deck plating was cold even through my ceramite boots. Temperature, approximately 16 degrees Celsius. The ship's atmospheric recyclers hummed at 47 hertz. I could think clearly. My thoughts moved in organized sequences. Problem, analysis, solution. Standard Astartes cognitive function. Angron appeared on the observation platform above us. I had seen him 3 times prior. Each time, the nails in his skull were more visible, brass housings and neural interface spikes protruding from his shaved scalp like a crown of agony. He did not speak immediately. His jaw worked, his hands clenched and unclenched. Even from 40 meters distance, I could see the muscle tremors. When he spoke, his voice carried the strain of someone fighting through pain to form words. My sons, you call yourselves warriors, you call yourselves the Warhounds, but you are soft, you hesitate, you think. Warriors do not think, they act, they kill. They wade through blood until there is nothing left but victory or death. He gestured to the tech priests assembled beside him. These servants will grant you clarity. They will remove doubt. They will make you what you should be, weapons without restraint, killers without mercy. This is my gift to you. This is how you become my true sons. I did not understand then. I thought he was speaking metaphorically. Astartes received many augmentations. Another implant system seemed standard. Unpleasant, perhaps, but necessary for compliance with our Primarch's vision. The tech priest called my name 3 hours later. I reported to Surgery Bay 7. The procedure took 4 hours and 17 minutes. I was conscious for all of it. Astartes' physiology does not permit conventional anesthesia. Our enhanced metabolism processes it too quickly. They used localized suppressants and restraint fields. I felt the drill enter my skull behind my right temple, felt it bore through ceramite hard bone, down through layers of augmented tissue, seeking the specific neural clusters where rage and aggression originate. The Mechanicum had identified these structures centuries ago. They knew exactly where to place the electrodes. The tech priest narrated his work as he operated. Primary aggression center located. Inserting stimulation array. Secondary array positioning in progress. Tertiary array. His voice continued, clinical and detached, while my skull opened and machinery entered my brain. When they activated the nails for the first time, I understood what Angron had given us. Pain. Not physical pain. The localized suppressants handled that adequately. This was neural pain. The sensation of my own brain being overridden, forced into patterns it had not chosen. Rage flooded my consciousness like pressure behind my eyes. I wanted to kill. Not for tactical reasons. Not for the Emperor. Not for anything except the need itself, burning in neural pathways that had been artificially activated. The rage lasted 47 seconds. Then it receded, leaving me gasping against the restraints, understanding perfectly what had been done to me. Activation successful, the tech priest said. Initial response within acceptable parameters. Subject will experience periodic activation cycles as the implants integrate with existing neural architecture. Full integration expected within 6 months. They released me from the surgical bay. I walked back to my quarters on unsteady legs, feeling the nails as a presence in my skull. Not painful when inactive, just there, waiting. A loaded weapon pressed against the inside of my brain. That night, lying in my bunk, I experienced the first unsolicited activation. The nails engaged without warning. Rage flooded through me. I wanted to kill everyone in the adjoining quarters. I wanted to tear open the bulkhead and paint the corridor with their blood. The need was overwhelming, more powerful than hunger, more consuming than any sensation I had experienced in my enhanced life. I fought it. I remained in my bunk, hands clenched on the frame hard enough to bend the metal, and I fought the nail's demand for 17 minutes until the activation cycle ended. When the rage receded, I was shaking. My jaw ached from clenching. The muscles in my neck and shoulders had contracted so hard that I had microfractures in my enhanced bone structure. This happened again 4 hours later, and 6 hours after that, and continuously in varying intervals for the next 250 years. I tried to track the activation patterns initially: frequency, duration, intensity. I thought if I understood the mechanism, I could predict it, control it, manage it somehow. But the nails are not consistent. Sometimes they activate every 3 hours, sometimes every 40 minutes, sometimes multiple times per hour, overlapping activations that leave no space for rational thought between rage episodes. The Legion called it integration. You'll adapt, the veterans told me. The nails become part of you. You stop fighting them. You learn to ride the rage like a wave, let it carry you where it wants to go. They were describing surrender. I refused. For the first 20 years, I maintained detailed logs of every activation. Time, duration, intensity, measured by observable physical responses. I thought documentation would provide understanding. I thought understanding would provide control. I was wrong. The nails do not care about understanding. They are not sophisticated. They are brutally simple. Stimulate aggression centers. Produce rage response. Repeat. They were never designed for control. They were designed for compliance through exhaustion. Eventually, the subject stops resisting and simply kills when the nails demand it, because resisting is more painful than compliance. I discovered this during the Genna compliance action. 32 years after implantation, we deployed against a human civilization that had refused Imperial integration. Standard planetary assault. Our objective was a fortified city designated Target Alpha. Population, approximately 4 million. Tactical analysis suggested 3-week siege followed by systematic sector clearance. Angren ordered immediate assault. No siege, no preparation. Break their walls and kill until they submit. I was part of the primary breach team. We carved through their defensive lines in 4 hours, our bolters and chain axes turning resistance into paste. The nails sang in our skulls, rewarding each kill with pleasure-pain feedback that made us want more. By midday, we had penetrated the city proper. This was where tactical discipline should have asserted itself. Methodical advance, secure sectors, eliminate resistance systematically. But the nails do not permit methodical anything. I found myself in a residential sector. The combat had passed through here hours before. No armed resistance remained. Only civilians hiding in their HAB units, waiting for evacuation orders that would never come. The nails activated. Strong activation, 8/10 intensity. I needed to kill something. The tactical situation was irrelevant. The civilians were irrelevant. The fact that they were unarmed and terrified and sobbing behind locked doors, irrelevant. The nails demanded blood. I kicked open the first door. A family inside. 2 adults, 3 children. The adults moved to shield the children. Brave. Futile. I killed all 5 in under 30 seconds. The nails rewarded me with pleasure feedback. The rage decreased slightly. Not enough. I moved to the next HAB unit. 4 more civilians. Dead in 20 seconds. Rage decreased another increment. Still not enough. I processed 17 HAB units in 40 minutes. 63 civilians total. Men, women, children, elderly. The nails did not discriminate. Blood is blood. Death is death. Feed the machine. When the activation cycle finally ended, I stood in a corridor slick with blood, surrounded by corpses who had posed 0 tactical threat, and I understood what I had become. Not a warrior, not even a killer, a slave to machinery in my skull, a weapon that fired when the trigger was pulled, regardless of appropriate targets. I tried to report the incident to my sergeant. I killed civilians, non-combatants. The nails. He looked at me with something between pity and contempt. We all did, brother. Look around. The entire sector is corpses. You think you were the only one? The nails make us efficient. Stop questioning. Start accepting. I could not accept. I would not. This was not what I had become an Astartes to do. I had sworn oaths to protect humanity, to defend the Imperium, to serve the Emperor's vision of unified mankind. Murdering terrified civilians in their homes was not service. It was atrocity enabled by malfunctioning technology. I requested an audience with the Legion's chief apothecary. Request denied. I requested transfer to another Legion. Request denied. I requested removal of the nails. The apothecary who reviewed my request actually laughed. Remove them. They're integrated with your neural architecture. Extraction would require removing significant portions of your brain. You would die, or you would survive as a vegetative remnant. The nails are permanent, brother. You chose this when you took the implants. I did not understand what I was choosing. Irrelevant. The choice is made. Adapt or fail. I tried adapting. For 60 years, I studied meditation techniques from classified librarian archives. I practiced mental discipline exercises. I attempted to build cognitive barriers between my consciousness and the nails' activation. None of it worked. The nails are not psychological. They are neurological. They stimulate structures that exist below conscious control. No amount of meditation or discipline can override direct neural stimulation. But I tried anyway, because the alternative was accepting that I would spend the rest of my extended life as a puppet, dancing to implanted machinery's demands. At 74 years post-implantation, I encountered Sergeant Khorne. He had received the nails 6 years before me. I found him in the meditation chamber, sitting in lotus position, attempting breath control exercises, while blood ran from his nose and his hands trembled. "How long have you been fighting them?" I asked. He did not open his eyes. 80 years. Does it get easier? No, it gets harder. The nails were designed to break resistance. The more you fight, the stronger the activations become. But I cannot stop fighting. If I surrender to them, I am no longer Khorne. I am just the nails wearing Khorne's body. I sat beside him. We meditated together, two Astartes trying to reclaim fragments of control over our own minds, while machinery hummed in our skulls, waiting to drown us again. 3 hours later, mid-meditation, the nails activated in both of us simultaneously. Strong activation, 9/10 intensity. We looked at each other. I saw my own desperation reflected in his eyes. Then the rage consumed rational thought, and we tried to kill each other. We fought for 14 minutes. The meditation chamber was too small for proper Astartes combat. We crashed through walls, shattered furniture, broke each other's bones, and continued fighting while they healed. Blood covered everything. The sound of our combat brought other brothers running. They pulled us apart. The nails deactivated. We stood facing each other, both damaged, both breathing hard, both conscious of what had just happened. "I am sorry," Khorne said. "I could not control it." We never meditated together again. The nails had learned. They waited until we were together, then activated, turning our attempt at control into violence. The machinery in our skulls was crude, but it was learning to suppress resistance more effectively. Khorne died 4 years later. Not in combat, he sealed himself in his quarters and deactivated his life support. I found his body when the atmosphere finally vented. He had left a message carved into the wall with his combat knife. "I will not be their weapon anymore." I envied him. He had found an escape I could not access. My Astartes physiology was too resilient. I could survive depressurization, survive most toxins, survive injuries that would kill baseline humans instantly. The nails had been installed in a body designed to endure, and that endurance became a prison. I tried anyway. I attempted suicide 7 times between year 83 and year 112. Each time my enhanced physiology saved me, or other brothers intervened, or the nails themselves activated and turned my self-destructive attempt into rage that demanded external targets. The 7th attempt was the worst. I had acquired a melter bomb, enough explosive to vaporize my head and the nails with it. I armed the device in an isolated cargo bay. 30 seconds to detonation. I stood there, watching the timer count down, thinking finally this ends. At 7 seconds remaining, the nails activated. The strongest activation I had ever experienced. 10 tense intensity. Pure rage, uncut, absolute. I could not think through it, could not reason, could only move. I disarmed the bomb. My hands moved without conscious direction, following the nail's override of my suicidal impulse. When the activation ended, I stood there holding the disarmed explosive, understanding that the nails would not even permit me to die if dying meant escaping them. They owned me, completely. My body was their puppet. My consciousness was a passenger permitted to observe but not control. This was when I met Matthias. He was not World Eaters. He was Iron Hands, assigned to our fleet as part of an inter-legion technical exchange, a tech marine specializing in neurological augmentation systems. When I heard he was reviewing nails-related maintenance requests, I went to him immediately. I want them removed, I told him. He examined me with cool mechanical precision. Half his face was augmented metal. His eyes were bionic implants that clicked and refocused as he analyzed me. Removal would be fatal. This is documented. I accept fatality as preferable to continuation. That is not your choice to make. You are Legion property. Voluntary termination requires authorization you do not possess. Reduce their activation frequency. Dampen their intensity. Anything. Matthias was silent for 41 seconds, processing. Then, come to my workshop. I will examine your specific nails configuration. I make no promises. His workshop was a converted cargo bay filled with technical equipment I barely recognized. He had me sit in a diagnostic chair while he connected scanning equipment to the neural ports in my skull. Interesting, he said after several minutes of analysis. Your nails show unusual integration resistance. Most World Eaters' neural patterns adapt to the implants within 20 years. Yours have been fighting for over a century. This is causing increased activation frequency as the system attempts to force compliance. Can you stop that? Potentially. I can attempt to install a buffer system between your conscious neural structures and the nail's activation protocols. It would not remove the rage. It would simply give you 0.3 seconds of awareness before each activation, enough time to recognize what is happening, not enough to prevent it. That is not control. No, but it is more than you have now. 0.3 seconds to prepare, to position yourself away from allies, to acknowledge that what happens next is the machine, not you. It was something, not freedom, not even meaningful control, but something more than absolute slavery to the implants. Do it, I said. The procedure took 6 hours. Matthias worked with precision I had rarely observed, even among Astartes. He installed micro-buffers at 17 connection points between my existing neural architecture and the nail's interface. Delicate work. One miscalculation would have caused catastrophic neural cascade. When he finished, I felt different. Not better. Just different. The nails were still present, still waiting, but there was the slightest sensation of space between my consciousness and their activation, like a thin membrane that might provide one moment of warning. Testing required, Matthias said. I will activate the nails manually at low intensity. Observe your response. He triggered the activation through his diagnostic equipment. I felt the rage begin to rise, and 0.3 seconds before it fully engaged, I felt the buffer activate. A tiny moment of clarity. Thought, activation incoming. Then, rage. The low-intensity activation lasted only 10 seconds. When it ended, I was breathing hard but had not moved from the chair. "Successful," Matthias said. "The buffer functions. You experienced the warning interval?" "Yes. 0.3 seconds. You were precise. I am always precise." He disconnected the diagnostic equipment. "This is all I can provide. The nails remain yours to carry. But you will know when they activate. You will have one fraction of a second to be yourself before they make you their weapon. That is the most freedom anyone can grant you." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. It was more than any World Eater had offered me in 100 years. Matthias became my primary bond, not through combat or shared glory, through the simple fact that he had looked at my suffering and attempted to provide relief, however minimal. I sought him out regularly after that. We spoke during his research periods, when his duties permitted. He was fascinated by the nails from a technical perspective, their crude effectiveness, their brutal simplicity, their complete disregard for the subject's autonomy. "They are remarkable," he told me once. "Not sophisticated, not elegant, but remarkably effective at their designed purpose, creating soldiers who cannot refuse to fight. The Mechanicum would never approve such implants officially. They violate 7 primary protocols regarding cognitive autonomy. But Angren's authority supersedes protocol. They are torture devices installed permanently in our skulls." I said. "Yes, that is also accurate. The two statements are not mutually exclusive." He paused, recalibrating his optical implants. "I am attempting to design a full suppression system, not a buffer. Complete suppression. It would require significant surgical intervention, but theoretically, I could sever the nail's connection to your aggression centers while leaving the implants physically intact. You would still have them in your skull. They simply would not function. How long until you complete this design? Unknown. The research is complex. I estimate 4 to 7 years for full development and testing. I will wait," I said, "however long it requires." I had hope. For the first time in over a century, I had hope. Matthias would solve this. He would free me from the nail's control. I simply had to endure until his research completed. I endured it for 4 years and 3 months. Then we deployed to Istvan III. The betrayal. The virus bombing. The moment when the War Master's forces revealed their true allegiance and declared war on the Emperor they had once served. The World Eaters descended to the surface, and I descended with them, thinking we were purging traitors. We were traitors. We simply had not been informed until the moment became irreversible. Matthias was on the surface. His technical team had deployed to assist with fortification assessments. He was in Sector 7 Gamma when the virus bombs fell. I was 3 kilometers away, inside a bunker complex that survived the initial bombardment. When the atmospheric saturation reached lethal concentrations, I tried to reach him. I ran through burning streets, through corpses dissolving in viral clouds, through entire blocks reduced to biological slurry. The nails activated repeatedly. I fought through each activation, using Matthias's buffer to maintain just enough awareness to keep moving toward his last known position. I found him in the ruins of a communications bunker. The virus had penetrated the structure. His Iron Hand's augmentations had protected him longer than his baseline team members, but not long enough. He was still breathing when I reached him. Barely. His organic lung tissue was dissolving. His vocal augmentics were damaged, but he was conscious. He saw me. His optical implants focused. His remaining organic hand moved fractionally, gesturing me closer. I knelt beside him. The virus was thick here. My Astartes physiology could process it temporarily, but not indefinitely. I had perhaps 2 minutes before concentration levels exceeded my body's filtration capacity. Matthias's voice came through his damaged augmentics as broken static and fragmentary words. "Research. Incomplete. Suppression system. Not finished." "I know," I said. "It is acceptable. You tried." "Tried. Failed. You, still prisoner. Nails, still control. You gave me the buffer. You gave me 0.3 seconds. That was more than anyone else offered. His hand moved again, reaching toward the neural interface ports in my skull. If I had time, could have freed you, given real silence, real control. His breathing deteriorated, wet sounds. Dissolution. Sorry I failed you. You did not fail me, I said. But he was already dying, his consciousness fading as his organic components dissolved, leaving his mechanical augmentations intact, while the man who had inhabited them ceased to exist. I held his hand while he died, held it while the virus concentration increased around us, held it while the nails activated twice in rapid succession, and I fought through both activations using his buffer, using his gift, to remain present for his death. When his biosigns flatlined, I sat there for 47 additional seconds, holding the hand of the only person in 100 years who had tried to help me, while the virus burned in my lungs, and the nails screamed for blood, and my consciousness remained trapped between machinery and my skull and the dying body of my last connection to hope. I did not die there. My enhanced physiology processed the virus eventually. I survived to witness the full scope of the betrayal, survived to see the World Eaters declare for Horus, survived to understand that we had become traitors to the Imperium, and I could not resist because the nails would not permit resistance. When Angren commanded us to kill Loyalist survivors, the nails activated, and I killed Loyalist survivors. When he commanded us to board ships bound for Terra, I boarded ships. When he commanded us to make war on the Emperor himself, I made war. Not because I chose to, because the nails chose for me. Because Matthias's research had died with him, and the suppression system that might have freed me existed only as incomplete data files on corrupted storage devices buried under Istvan's ash. I existed in the nail's grip for another 146 years, fighting, killing, serving Khorne, not because I swore allegiance to the blood god, but because the nail's demands aligned with his worship so perfectly that my brothers assumed my slaughter was devotion. It was not devotion, it was slavery, but slavery indistinguishable from worship produces the same results. Blood flows regardless of the killer's motivation. I became what I had feared, what I had resisted. Korad had died to escape, not because I surrendered, not because I accepted, but because resistance became impossible once Matthias died. He had been my last hope. Without him, I was simply a world eater with nails in his skull, serving the function for which I had been designed. The nails made me efficient. I killed thousands, tens of thousands. I lost count after 30,000 documented terminations. I carved through loyalists and traitors alike. I participated in atrocities that had no tactical purpose except feeding the rage that machinery demanded I feed. And through it all, Matthias's buffer remained functional. 0.3 seconds before each activation. 0.3 seconds to be Karthak, to remember who I was, before becoming the nail's weapon again. That tiny fraction of awareness became my curse. I could not escape consciousness, could not surrender into rage completely. I remained aware, present, witnessing every action the nails forced me to commit. A passenger in my own body. A consciousness trapped in machinery that used me to kill, endlessly, for centuries, while I screamed silently in the fraction of a second before each episode, and begged for death that never came. Time becomes difficult to track when consciousness exists only in fragments. 0.3 seconds of awareness, then rage, then 0.3 seconds, then rage, cycling endlessly. Days blur into months, blur into years. The buffer that Matthias installed continues functioning, never degrading, never failing. His final gift, eternal awareness of my imprisonment. I mark time by campaigns, not by Terran standard years, but by the wars the World Eaters wage across the Eye of Terror and beyond. The Dominion of Fire, the Skull Harvest, the Bleeding Reaches. Each campaign is years of continuous violence, interrupted by brief transit periods where the nails activate less frequently, and I can almost remember what sustained thought felt like. At approximately, I encountered Sergeant Berwick. He was younger than me, only 90 years with the nails. He still possessed the energy to hate them actively, to curse them during the brief moments between activations. We stood in the armory of the Conqueror, preparing weapons for the next deployment. This was one of the few activities that did not immediately trigger activation. The nails seemed satisfied by the promise of future violence represented by weapon maintenance. "How do you endure it?" Berwick asked, his hands shaking as he loaded bolter magazines. 170 years. How have you not gone completely mad? "I am mad," I said. "We are all mad. The question is not how to avoid madness. The question is how to remain conscious. I want it to stop. I want 1 hour. 1 hour where I control my own thoughts." I understood his desperation. I had felt it identically a century before. There is no stopping it. The nails are permanent. Extraction is fatal. Resistance only increases activation frequency. These are facts. Processing these facts is survival. That is just slower dying. Yes, Berwick stared at me. "And you have done this for 170 years. Just accepted it." "I have not accepted it. I have continued despite it. Those are different things." He returned to loading magazines, his hands still shaking. I watched him and saw myself at 90 years, still hoping for escape, still believing that sufficient desperation might produce a solution. He would learn, as I had learned, that hope was incompatible with the nails' function. They had been designed to eliminate hope along with every other emotion except rage. 3 weeks later, during a boarding action against an Imperial vessel, I saw Berwick fail. The nails activated while he was in close quarters with other World Eaters. He should have directed his rage toward the enemy. Instead, he turned on his own brothers, attacking them with the same fury he would show foes. They killed him. Standard procedure. A berserker who cannot distinguish ally from enemy is a liability. They cut him down with chain axes, and his blood mixed with the enemy's blood on the deck plating, and no one mourned him because mourning was an emotion the nails had long since burned out of us. I felt nothing watching him die. Not sorrow, not relief, just observation. Berwick had existed, now he did not. The pattern continued, but in my point, 3 seconds of awareness that night, I thought, he escaped. He found a way out that I cannot access. He provoked the one death the nails would permit. Death by brothers who saw him as threat rather than comrade. I attempted the same thing twice over the next decade. During void combat, I deliberately turned my rage toward nearby World Eaters, hoping they would terminate me as they had terminated Berwick. The first attempt failed because I telegraphed my intentions too obviously. My brothers restrained me instead of killing me, recognizing my action as suicide attempt rather than genuine nails-induced malfunction. They chained me in the hold for 3 days until my activation cycles normalized. The second attempt came closer. I wounded 2 brothers before they subdued me. But again, restraint instead of termination, they understood what I was trying to accomplish, and they refused to grant it. "You do not get to escape," one of them told me while I hung in restraint chains. "We all carry the nails. We all suffer. Your suffering is not special. You endure it like we endure it, until the nails or combat finally kills you naturally. I have endured for 183 years. How much endurance is sufficient? However much is required." He turned away. "Stop trying to die. Start trying to kill better. At least make your suffering useful. Make suffering useful." That was the World Eater's philosophy distilled to its essence. We could not escape our torment, so we inflicted it outward. We made the galaxy suffer because we suffered. This was not cruelty. Cruelty implied choice. This was simply the nail's nature expressing itself through our bodies across thousands of battlefields. I stopped attempting suicide after that, not because I accepted continuation, but because every attempt had failed, and attempting the impossible was its own form of madness. I would continue until organic failure or combat mortality occurred naturally. That was the only available future. At year 194, we deployed to a demon world designated Crucible. The world existed partially in real space, partially in the warp. Time functioned strangely there. Our fleet navigator calculated we would spend 6 months objective time on the surface. We spent 3 years subjective time, trapped in continuous combat against demonic entities that reconstituted faster than we could destroy them. The nails activated constantly, every 7 minutes on average. Some activations lasted only seconds. Some lasted hours. There was no pattern, no predictability, just endless cycling between brief awareness and extended rage. During the second year's subjective, I lost the ability to distinguish between activation states. The rage became continuous background. My point. 3 seconds of awareness became fragments floating in an ocean of violence. I killed demons. I killed cultists. I killed things I could not identify. I killed continuously, mechanically, while my consciousness fragmented into smaller and smaller pieces that could no longer maintain coherent thought. I forgot my name. Not permanently, but for extended periods I could not retrieve it. I was not Karthak. I was the weapon the nails wielded. I was the rage made flesh. I was the function, not the person. When we finally extracted from Crucible after 3 years subjective, I spent 2 weeks in my quarters, attempting to reassemble my fragmented consciousness. Matthias's buffer still functioned, still providing 0.3 seconds, but those seconds had become harder to use. My thoughts during them were confused, disorganized, barely recognizable as thought at all. I forced myself to speak my name aloud. Karthak. I am Karthak. I was warhounds before becoming world eaters. I received the nails at age 23. I am now approximately 370 years old, adjusted for warp time distortion. I am still conscious. I am still myself. Saying it did not make it true, but saying it was the only ritual I possessed for reconstructing identity after extended dissolution. I encountered Brother Tharos during this reconstruction period. He had served with the nails for 220 years. We stood together in the observation deck watching void transit, saying nothing because there was nothing to say that we had not said 1,000 times before. Finally, he spoke. Do you remember why you wanted to be Astartes? I processed the question, searched corrupted memory files for anything predating implantation, found fragments. I wanted to serve, to protect humanity, to be something greater than baseline human limitation. I wanted glory, Tharos said. I wanted to be a hero in the Emperor's crusade. I wanted people to speak my name with reverence. He laughed, a sound like tearing metal. The nails gave me exactly what I wanted. They made me glorious, famous, feared across the galaxy. I have killed more enemies than most chapters destroy in their entire existence. My name is spoken with reverence by those who worship Khorne. That is not what you wanted. No, but it is what I received. The nails granted every superficial desire while destroying the person who held those desires. I am Tharos. I am also not Tharos. I am the thing wearing his name and body. The distinction stopped mattering approximately 50 years ago. It still matters to me, I said. Then you have not reached acceptance. I will never reach acceptance. Tharos looked at me with something that might have been pity if the nails had left him capable of pity. Then you will suffer more than necessary. Acceptance is not surrender. It is simply acknowledging reality without fighting the unchangeable. The nails are unchangeable. Fighting them only increases the pain. If I stop fighting, I become only the nails. Nothing remains of Karthak. Karthak is already gone. You are a memory of Karthak, archived in damaged neural tissue, replaying in 0.3-second intervals. Let the memory rest. Let the nails have what they have already taken. He left me alone in the observation deck. I stood there for 3 hours, processing his words, understanding their logic, rejecting their conclusion. He was wrong. He had to be wrong. If Karthak was already gone, then everything since implantation had been pointless suffering. The resistance, the documentation, the relationships, Matthias's buffer, all of it would be meaningless if the person experiencing it had already ceased to exist. I refused that conclusion. I remained, damaged, fragmented, barely recognizable as the person I had been, but present, aware, still fighting even when fighting produced nothing except extended suffering. Tharos died 7 months later, not in combat. He simply stopped moving during a lull between campaigns, stood motionless in the corridor, weapons lowered, while his brothers moved around him. After 6 hours, the apothecaries examined him. His brain had simply stopped processing. Massive neural failure. Origin unknown. They speculated the nails had finally destroyed too much organic tissue. His consciousness had dissolved while his body remained operational. They dragged his corpse to the disposal vents. Another brother lost to the nails, not through violence but through the long attrition of having machinery slowly consume your brain across 2 centuries. I added him to my archive. Not formal documentation, I had stopped maintaining detailed logs after Crucible. Just memory. Tharos had existed, had fought the nails for 220 years, had finally concluded that acceptance was preferable to resistance. Had died anyway, consciousness erased while body persisted, reduced to meat animated by implants that no longer had a person to puppet. This would be my fate eventually. The nails would consume enough neural tissue that consciousness became impossible. I would continue operating. The nails would ensure that, but Karthak would be gone, erased, replaced entirely by the machinery's demands. I had perhaps 50 years before that dissolution completed, maybe less. Neural degradation was accelerating. Each activation cycle damaged more tissue. Each campaign fragmented my thoughts further. I could feel myself eroding in real time, measured in 0.3-second intervals that became progressively less coherent. At year 209, I was assigned to a kill team tasked with eliminating a word-bearer's apostle who had offended our war master. The mission was simple: board his vessel, reach his sanctum, terminate him, extract. The kill team included 6 World Eaters. I did not know any of them well. We did not form bonds. Bonds were liabilities when anyone might turn berserk and attack their brothers during activation. We breached the word-bearer's vessel through a boarding torpedo, fought through 3 decks of defenders. The nails activated in all of us repeatedly during the assault. We became a single organism of violence, moving forward, killing everything, sustained by the rage machinery pumped through our skulls. The apostle waited in his sanctum, surrounded by cultists and demons. He was not afraid. World Eaters, Khorne's mindless dogs, you cannot kill me. My master protects his servants. We killed his demons. We killed everything in his sanctum and the 3 adjacent compartments. The nails demanded thoroughness. When the activation cycles ended, I stood in a sanctum painted entirely in blood. My brothers were similarly covered. We had been efficient. The word-bearer's protection had not mattered. Faith provides no defense against berserkers who cannot be reasoned with or intimidated. One of my brothers started laughing. High, broken laughter that continued for 47 seconds. When he stopped, he said, "We are Khorne's perfect servants. We kill everything. We spare nothing. We are exactly what he wants us to be." "We are slaves," I said. "We serve Khorne because the nails force us to serve him. If the machinery could be removed, we would stop instantly. But the machinery cannot be removed. So we serve. Voluntarily or involuntarily produces identical results. Khorne receives his offerings regardless of our consent." He was correct. This was my complicity made explicit. By continuing to operate, by surviving, by carrying the nails through centuries of warfare, I enabled Khorne's will. My resistance was internal, invisible, meaningless to external observers. They saw a World Eater killing in Khorne's name. Whether I screamed internally between activations was irrelevant to the corpses I created. I had become what I fought against, not because I surrendered, not because I chose it, But because the nails made the distinction between choice and compulsion irrelevant, the Blood God received his tribute. My suffering changed nothing. We extracted from the word-bearer's vessel. Mission successful. Another apostle dead. Another offering to Khorne. Another demonstration that world eaters were the perfect instruments of the Blood God's will. I returned to my quarters and sat in darkness for 11 hours, processing the realization that my continued existence served Khorne's purpose. Every day I survived was another day his machinery had a puppet to manipulate. Every activation I endured was another activation's worth of blood spilled in his name. The only way to stop serving him was to stop existing. But I could not stop existing. The nails would not permit it. My enhanced physiology would not permit it. My brothers would not permit it, recognizing suicide attempts and intervening before completion. I was trapped in service to a god I despised, wielding a body I could not control, experiencing consciousness I could not terminate. This was my eternal condition. This was what remained of Karthak after 209 years of machinery puppeting his enhanced corpse. At year 223, I experienced isolation in its purest form. Our warband deployed to a space hulk designated the Maw of Torment. The hulk was vast, 17 merged vessels, some Imperial, some Xenos, all fused together by warp exposure and gravitational stress. Our objective was to clear a path to the hulk's core, where our sorcerers had detected something of value. I became separated from my brothers during combat in the hulk's depths. A structural collapse sealed the corridor behind me. My Vox was damaged. My Auspex showed no nearby life signs. I was alone in a lightless corridor deep inside a space hulk, with no way to navigate back to my brothers and no way to signal for extraction. I began walking. The corridor extended for 3 kilometers before terminating in a sealed bulkhead. I backtracked, found an access shaft, descended 4 levels, emerged in another corridor. Repeated this pattern for 6 hours, mapping the hulk's interior, searching for either my brothers or an external hull breach. The nails activated 11 times during those 6 hours. Each time I raged in empty corridors with nothing to kill. I tore at walls. I fired my bolter into the darkness until the magazine emptied. I swung my chain axe at shadows. The nails demanded violence, and there was nothing to be violent toward except myself and the hulk's structure. After 6 hours, I found a sealed chamber. Emergency life support still functioned inside. I entered, sealed the door behind me, and sat in the darkness while my armor's systems slowly recharged from the chamber's minimal power. I remained there for 43 days. I do not know if my brothers searched for me. I do not know if they assumed I was dead. My Vox remained non-functional. My Auspex detected no life signs beyond my own. I existed in absolute isolation, conscious, unable to die, unable to escape, while the nails activated every few hours and drove me to rage against sealed walls. During the first week, I attempted to force the door open during activation cycles, channeling the rage into productive escape attempt. The door was void-rated ceramite 3 meters thick. My strength, even enhanced by Berserker fury, was insufficient. During the second week, I stopped attempting escape. I simply experienced the cycle. 0.3 seconds of awareness. I am Karthak. I am trapped. I will die here. Then, rage, lasting anywhere from 4 minutes to 3 hours. Then, 0.3 seconds again. During the third week, I lost the ability to distinguish between activation and baseline consciousness. Was I always enraged, with brief moments of false awareness? Was I always aware, with the rage being a temporary delusion? The boundary dissolved. I existed in a state that was simultaneously both and neither. During the 4th week, I began talking to Matthias. He was not there. He had been dead for over a century, but in isolation my damaged consciousness reconstructed him from archived memory, and he spoke to me in the darkness. The suppression system was nearly complete, he said. Another 3 months and I could have freed you. You died. The research died with you. If you could reach my laboratory, the files still exist. Corrupted, but potentially recoverable. You could finish my work. Your laboratory was on Istvan 3. Nothing remains there except ash and vitrified glass. Then you will carry the nails forever. But you already knew that. Why are we having this conversation? Because I am alone and going mad, and you are the only person in 223 years who tried to help me. I failed to help you. I gave you a buffer. 0.3 seconds. That is not freedom. That is just more refined torture. It was more than anyone else offered. The hallucination of Matthias said nothing for extended time. Then, you have been isolated for 4 weeks. Your brothers are not searching for you. They believe you dead. You will remain here until your life support fails, or you die of dehydration despite your enhanced physiology. This is your ending. Alone in darkness, speaking to the dead, while machinery in your skull continues forcing rage through your dying brain. I know. Does it comfort you to finally have an ending? I processed the question during one of my 0.3-second intervals of clarity. Did impending death comfort me? After 2 centuries of seeking termination, was I satisfied that it approached naturally? No, I said to the darkness. I wanted to die free. I wanted to die as Karthak, not as the nails puppet. This is just another form of slavery. Even my death belongs to the machinery. Matthias faded back into corrupted memory files, and I sat in darkness alone, waiting for death that approached with agonizing slowness. On day 43, the chamber door opened. Brother Captain Koros stood in the opening, his armor's lights flooding the chamber. Karthak, you survive. Unfortunately, the warband departed the Hulk 3 weeks ago. We assumed you were dead. Why did you not attempt to signal? My Vox is non-functional. He examined me with veteran's assessment. You have been isolated for 6 weeks standard, alone with the nails. How are you still coherent? I am not coherent. I am simply still conscious. Those are different conditions. Koros pulled me to my feet. You will accompany me to extraction. We have new campaigns planned. The warband requires every functional berserker. Back to the extraction point. Back to my brothers and the fleet and the endless cycling of deployment and violence that constituted my existence. The isolation had ended. The continuation resumed. But something had changed during those 43 days. Some fundamental understanding had settled into my damaged consciousness. I articulated it to myself during the next clear point. 3-second interval. I will never be free. The nails will control me until neural degradation or combat finally kills me. Resistance is meaningless. Acceptance is impossible. I exist in the space between, conscious but not autonomous, aware but not in control, forever puppeted by machinery I cannot escape. This was not despair. Despair implied emotional investment in outcomes. This was simply recognition of fact. I would continue, because continuation was inevitable. The nails would ensure it. My enhanced physiology would enable it. I would rage and kill and serve Khorne's purposes against my will, for however many decades remained before final dissolution. At year 237, I encountered a 1,000-sun sorcerer during a raid on a corrupted forge world. He was not our target. We were there for different objectives. But the nails activated, and I attacked him immediately, and he defended himself with warcraft that should have killed me. Instead, he immobilized me. Psychic restraint. I hung suspended in the air, unable to move, while the activation cycle continued and I raged uselessly against invisible bonds. The sorcerer examined me with eyes that were not entirely human. Curious, you fight the rage. Most world eaters embrace it. But you resist. Why? I could not answer. The nails permitted no communication during activation. He waited. 7 minutes later, the cycle ended, and I hung exhausted in his psychic grip. He repeated his question. Why do you resist? Because the rage is not mine. It is the machinery's. I am not a berserker by choice. I am a prisoner forced to pretend I chose this. The butcher's nails. Angron's gift to his sons. The sorcerer's tone carried contempt. Crude, inelegant, but effective. You have carried them for how long? 237 years. And you have resisted for all that time? Fascinating. Most minds break within 50 years. Either they surrender to the rage, or they fragment entirely. You have maintained coherent resistance for 2 centuries. That suggests extraordinary will or extraordinary stubbornness. It suggests I am too damaged to surrender properly and too augmented to fragment completely. I exist in the worst possible state, conscious enough to suffer, unable to change or escape. The sorcerer studied me for 41 seconds. Then I could remove them, the nails. I could sever their connection to your neural architecture. It would require extensive psychic surgery, and the process would be agonizing. But it is possible. You would be free. I processed his offer. Freedom. Actual freedom. The removal I had sought for over 2 centuries, offered casually by an enemy sorcerer who had no reason to help me. What is the cost? I asked. Cost. You do not offer aid without price. What do you want in exchange? Only to observe. I wish to see what a world eater becomes when the nails are removed, whether the person underneath survives or whether the machinery has already consumed everything that made you human. Academic curiosity, nothing more. It was a trap, obviously a trap. The sorcerer would enter my mind, and he would destroy me or corrupt me, or claim me for his own purposes. No one offered freedom without ulterior motive. But it was also my only chance. 237 years without legitimate hope of removal, and now suspended in a sorcerer's grip, that hope offered itself. Do it, I said. He raised his hands, and psychic fire flooded into my skull, and I screamed. Not from pain. The sensation transcended pain. This was my entire neural architecture being rewritten in real time. The nails' connections being severed. The machinery's grip being torn away. My consciousness exposed to raw warp energy, while the sorcerer operated on structures that should have been inviolate. The process lasted 17 minutes. Each second was distinct, countable, eternal. I experienced every single moment of disconnection, felt the nails' influence separate from my aggression centers, felt pathways re-established that had been overridden for centuries, felt the rage recede, until silence, real silence, not the absence of sound, the absence of the nails' constant pressure. The machinery was still present in my skull. The sorcerer had not removed the physical implants. But they were no longer connected. They were just inert metal and circuitry, unable to activate, unable to force rage, unable to control me. I was free. The sorcerer released his psychic restraint. I collapsed to the ground, gasping, while my consciousness tried to process the absence of something that had defined my existence for 237 years. Remarkable, the sorcerer said. You survived. Most subjects die during the disconnection. Their consciousness is too dependent on the rage. When it's removed, nothing remains. But you are still coherent, still yourself. The person underneath survived. I tried to speak, could not. My vocalization systems were confused, accustomed to operating only in 0.3-second intervals. I had forgotten how to sustain continuous thought, continuous communication. The sorcerer watched me attempt to process freedom. You have approximately 40 seconds before your brothers realize where you are and come to retrieve you. I suggest you use that time to decide. Will you return to them? Resume your existence as a world eater, now with the knowledge that you are free, but cannot reveal that freedom without execution for demon-aided heresy? Or will you run? Attempt to escape the warband and live independently, knowing they will hunt you as a deserter. Returning meant hiding my freedom, pretending the nails still controlled me, living a lie among brothers who would kill me if they discovered the truth. Running meant being hunted by world eaters who would never stop pursuing me. "There is no escape," I said, finally achieving vocalization. "Even freedom is a trap." "Yes," the sorcerer agreed. "That is the nature of the Imperium's machinery. It consumes you so thoroughly that even liberation becomes another form of imprisonment. You have my sympathy, World Eater. Not that sympathy helps." He vanished, psychic displacement, gone before I could respond, leaving me standing in the Forge World's ruins, free from the Nail's control for the first time in 2 centuries, with no idea how to use that freedom. My brothers found me 90 seconds later. Brother Koros examined me suspiciously. "You were engaged with the sorcerer? He did not kill you. Why?" "I attacked." He defended. "He fled rather than continuing engagement. Cowardice, likely. You smell of warcraft? He touched your mind? He attempted psychic assault. My Nail's protection held." The lie came easily. I had learned to lie across centuries of hiding my resistance. Now I simply lied about different things. Koros accepted this explanation. We returned to the warband and continued the campaign. But everything had changed. The Nails no longer activated. I could think continuously, clearly, without fragmentary interruption. I could control my actions, choose my targets, decide when to engage and when to hold back. I had freedom, and I immediately discovered that freedom among world eaters was worthless. I had to pretend the Nails still controlled me, had to simulate rage responses, had to attack when the warband expected attack, kill when they expected killing, rage when they expected raging. I had spent 2 centuries as a prisoner forced to pretend consent. Now I was free but forced to pretend imprisonment. The sorcerer had been correct. Even liberation was a trap. I existed in freedom that I could not exercise. With autonomy, I could not reveal. Experiencing consciousness that was finally my own, but which had to be hidden constantly or face execution. This was somehow worse than the Nails. The machinery had provided an excuse, something external to blame. Now I had only myself. Every kill I committed was my choice. Every atrocity was my decision. I could no longer claim the Nails made me do it. I was doing it freely, to maintain cover, to survive among brothers who would execute me instantly if they discovered my freedom. I had wanted this, had begged for it, had spent 2 centuries seeking removal. And now that I possessed it, I discovered it changed nothing except my relationship to my own complicity. I served the Blood Guard, not because machinery forced me, because strategic necessity required it, because maintaining my disguise demanded I continue performing exactly as I had performed for 237 years. The results were identical. Only my awareness of responsibility had changed. This realization settled into my consciousness over the following weeks. I had achieved the impossible, removal of the Nail's control, and the achievement was meaningless. I remained trapped in the same existence, performing the same function, serving the same God, now simply conscious that I was choosing to do so. There was no escape. There had never been escape. The Nails were not the prison. The World Eaters were the prison. The warband, the fleet, the endless campaigns, the culture of rage that defined us. That was the trap. The Nails had simply been the most obvious component. Removing them revealed that the prison extended far beyond any single implant system. At year 241, I stopped pretending to struggle. I performed my function as World Eater without internal resistance, without complaint, without the fiction that I was anything other than what circumstances had made me. I killed when commanded. I raged when expected. I served Khorne's purposes efficiently and thoroughly, not because I had surrendered, but because I had recognized that every option available to me produced identical outcomes. Resistance, acceptance, freedom, slavery. All paths led to the same destination. I would continue killing until combat or degradation finally stopped me. That was my fate regardless of what machinery controlled me or what consciousness survived inside. I encountered Brother Captain Koros during a lull between campaigns. He observed me preparing my weapons with unusual focus. "You have changed," he said. "Over the past 4 years, you move differently, fight differently. The rage is—" He paused, searching for terminology, more controlled, refined, as though you direct it rather than being directed by it. "Perhaps I have finally learned to work with the nails instead of against them. 241 years is sufficient time for adaptation. Perhaps." Koros did not sound convinced. "Or perhaps something else has changed. I do not care which. You are functional. You kill effectively. That is sufficient." He departed. I returned to weapon preparation, understanding that my deception was imperfect but adequate. My brothers noticed changes, but did not care enough to investigate deeply. As long as I remained functional, as long as I killed when required, my internal state was irrelevant to them. I would continue this way, free but imprisoned, conscious but not autonomous, choosing to do what I would have been forced to do anyway, maintaining a fiction of rage to hide the reality of calculated violence. This was what remained after 241 years. This was what the Imperium's machinery had created, a consciousness that had survived everything designed to destroy it, only to discover that survival changed nothing. I existed. I functioned. I served purposes I despised, and I would continue doing so until final cessation, whether that cessation came in 1 year or 100. The nails had been removed, the prison remained. I remained inside it, conscious, aware, unable to escape, choosing every action that I had once been forced to perform. Discovering that choice and compulsion produced identical results when all available choices led to the same outcome. I am Karthak. I was warhounds before becoming world eaters. I am 250 years old. The butcher's nails no longer control me. I control myself, and I use that control to do exactly what the nails would have forced me to do anyway, because there is no alternative available that does not result in immediate execution or pursuit and eventual death. This is freedom in the 41st millennium. This is what liberation means when you are born into a system designed to eliminate every path except the one it wants you to walk. You can be conscious of the prison. You can resist the prison. You can even escape the prison's most obvious mechanisms. But you remain inside the larger structure, performing your assigned function, serving the machine that created you. I wanted to stop. I still want to stop. But stopping is not possible. So I continue. I kill. I rage, now by choice rather than compulsion, though the distinction is meaningless to those I kill. I serve the Blood God. I perpetuate the cycle. I am exactly what the Imperium's machinery designed me to be, despite every attempt at resistance, despite achieving the impossible removal of the nails, despite maintaining consciousness through 2.5 centuries of systematic destruction. The system won, not because I surrendered, but because victory and surrender produce identical outcomes when the system has eliminated every alternative. I will continue until I cannot. That is my testimony. That is all I have to offer. I existed, I resisted. I achieved freedom, I discovered freedom was another prison. I continue anyway because continuing is all that remains. Blood for the Blood God, not because I serve him willingly, but because unwilling service and willing service spill the same blood, and Khorne cares only for the blood, not for the will behind it. I am Karthak. I am a world eater. I am free. I am trapped. Both statements are true. Both statements are meaningless. This is what the butcher's nails cost. Not death, not even madness, but something worse, the discovery that even when you win, even when you achieve the impossible, even when you free yourself from the machinery, you remain its instrument. You remain its product. You remain what it made you, and you continue. Because continuing is all that remains, because the machinery does not need your consent. It only needs your body, your actions, your function. I provide all three. I always have. I always will. That is my testimony. That is what I witnessed. That is what remains. The Imperium consumes everything, even freedom, even hope, even the will to resist. It consumed me 250 years ago. I simply did not recognize it until now. I will continue anyway, not because I choose to. Not because machinery forces me to, but because choosing and forcing produce identical results, and the distinction between them disappeared somewhere in the 2.5 centuries I spent learning that lesson. Blood for the blood god. I will provide it willingly now. The universe cannot distinguish willing blood from unwilling blood. All blood is the same. All slaves are the same. All freedom is another form of slavery when the system owns every possible choice. I am Karthak. I existed. I exist. I will continue existing until I do not. That is all. That is everything. That is the brutal reality of being a berserker who tried to quit but could not stop the implants, and then discovered that stopping the implants changed nothing, and then discovered that nothing ever changes. And then discovered that discovery itself is just another mechanism the system uses to break you. I am broken. I am functional. Both are true. Both are meaningless. I will continue.